Welcome to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast, proudly brought to you by the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company. Thank you for joining us today in our search for what makes a great communicator. I'm your host, Joel Silverstone, and every episode we'll be speaking with leaders and experts on how they were able to use their communication skills to inspire, create trust, collaboration, and influence others all in a respectful manner. How did they do it? What did they do to get better? How did they adapt? Where did they fail? Listeners and viewers, if you are looking to improve your communication skills and take those steps to being the next great leader in business, you're in the right place. Enjoy the podcast. We can all agree everyone has a story. When you think of yours, what's holding you back from writing, from communicating your ideas and thoughts? Is it a fear of judgment? For most of us, that is a definite yes. Well, in today's episode, we've got Hannah Tuff to guide us on being more effective in our communication skills and, hint, drop your ego, and also be able to listen to the stories that want to be heard. Hannah Tuff is an international marketing and communication lead at Havas Canada. She's a contributor to online publications of Thrive Global and founded the nonprofit organization Activate T.O. Now, Hannah has always been a passionate writer. She knew that she wanted to work with words ever since she was able to read Robert Munsch books. For more on Hannah, go to her website at hannahtuff.com. Now, let's meet Hannah, and everyone has a story. And we are here with Hannah Tuff. Hannah, I am so glad you are here. We've got a lot to talk about writing and how that affects communication skills, your work with the community, and I love that part. We're going to be talking about why you were inspired to work with the community, and then of course we're going to be doing our failure tada, that moment where you had a basically a turning point in your life and what you learned from that, and that will be our show today. Are you ready, Hannah?
I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about writing. You know, I'm not a writer, and I think our audience is probably like me, where we're fascinated by people that have this ability to write. So let me ask the most basic question about writing, and that is how does one start? How did you start?
You have to start in your journal. I started writing just thoughts on paper.
And that's hard because, I mean, why is that hard? Why is that hard for us to start writing?
I think people are afraid of judgment. You know, when I was if you're a teenager, It's like, oh, I don't want my mom to find my diary. You know, that type of fear that your innermost thoughts and fears and feelings will be exposed somehow.
Yeah.
And when you put words on paper, it comes to life. It's something real.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there with that fear of judgment. I think that's what holds us back. It's our we're censoring ourselves from actually saying what we believe in or what we think or what we imagine. Was there something that triggered it for you that you didn't censor yourself? Was there a trick to that or a thought maybe?
Well, I've always been taught to write what I know. So write about my life, write about the experiences that I've had. And because we're all human, you know, some people have probably also had those experiences and can relate to what I've been through. And then it starts to build a community of people who are excited to share their stories.
Right. Right. So when you're writing for the public, because you do a lot of that in the marketing and the communications work you do. So what I'm hearing you say is that the magic to that is write what you know, and more importantly, not worry that people won't be able to connect to that.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, we have the unique syndrome. We all think that we're super unique. And of course, we all have amazing skills and different experiences in life. But when it comes down to it, we're all human. You know, we all have those basic human feelings and instincts, or like we said, our needs, wants, and fears. Right. So if you're able to share that even just a little bit, even in professional writing or in advertising, it appeals to what we need and want and what we fear. You know, we fear we're going to get in a car accident, so a car commercial will show us doing their impact
Right.
assessments, right? Like they show the car crashing in a test room, right? To show you, look, our car is very safe, if you get in an accident. So it's appealing to that kind of fear and that comforting. And everyone can relate to that. And so it's the same thing when writing social media posts or writing marketing or internal communications. Have to think about, what do I want? And there's probably other people out there that want the same thing.
Yeah, it's saying what you're thinking and realizing it's also probably what a lot of us are thinking as well. So when, as a reader, I read that and go, that is so true. Or I see that commercial. I was worried about safety. That was my number one concern. So absolutely. So then, as someone who deals with clients and colleagues, as a leader in communications, how does this translate in how you approach people in your communication style?
Ultimately, it comes down to asking them what they want. So instead of jumping right into a Zoom meeting or even face-to-face meeting and me going right into a presentation, telling them, talking at them, giving them all these points, telling them that I know best, I usually start by asking the team or the client or the individual, what do you want, or what do you see happening out of our partnership or this meeting? What are your goals? What are your notes? Like, what were you thinking before you came into this meeting or this room? Just to break the ice, first of all, and then also to make them feel comfortable and realize I'm not here to tell them, I'm not all knowing. I don't have all the answers, and let's try and work together rather than one person talking and one person listening. It can be a two-way conversation.
That's a great mindset to walk into communication, is that two-way mindset. And I love that question about what were you thinking before you just walked in here? That's a great one, because it could be about, I was thinking about the ad, I was thinking about my kids, I was thinking about lunch.
Exactly.
So that it's a great icebreaker and makes people feel safe, which I think is such an important part of what I'm hearing you say is to make people feel comfortable and feel safe to be able to share information that you need to be able to then do their marketing or their communication.
Yeah, and it's blending so much between personal life and professional life these days, especially with COVID and everything. It's hard to separate that home work life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think it has to be separated. I think there's a lot of good crossover that can come by incorporating the two together. I don't always like that word, like work-life balance. I think it's more of a work-life, like roller coaster, a work-life kind of, flowing, existing being. It's not a stagnant work and then home anymore. It's just not like that.
It's flow. I think that's a good word. I think
Yeah.
work-life balance is flow, because we're humans, and now we're not in one sense. One positive I think that has come out of this COVID situation the past year is that we are able to be more vulnerable, maybe even be more empathetic. Maybe, like you're saying, we are all unique and had unique situations, but we now have something in common. We now have some similarities.
Exactly.
We've all had some challenges throughout.
Mm-hmm.
So this kind of brings into this idea of the fears, the needs, the wants, what are our human basics. It kind of says about when we write or when we communicate,
Mm-hmm.
to not feel like we have to know it all, to allow a certain amount of vulnerability.
Exactly. I don't know it all, even if I am considered an expert on a subject, I don't know it all, and we're always learning from each other. So whether that's reading, whether that's speaking, whether that's, doing training, I find them to be a lot more interactive these days, with asking the audience questions, getting them involved. It's more about like challenging your brain to communicate in a different way.
Yes.
Rather than, okay, I took a bunch of notes and read a chapter of a book. Now I know how to communicate differently, but you haven't put it into practice.
Yeah,
Right?
you got to put it into practice. And this is what I like. This is why we're having you on the show, Hannah, because it's like looking from the writer's perspective, someone who has put words on paper and given some thought. And what you have said about it's this lack of fear of judgment in writing has
Mm-hmm.
inspired the way that you communicate, which is to not be afraid to ask questions, to not afraid to
Mm-hmm.
be curious. And this
Exactly.
seems to be this is, as you said, it continues to challenge yourself because you can feel maybe not in control sometimes of a conversation at the beginning.
That's definitely true. When you want to walk into a room and give a presentation, it's like, yeah, I want to control the room,
Yeah.
right? But I try and look at it differently in the sense that like I'm trying to build a community, whether it's a community just for 1 hour that we're having that meeting is my community for that moment. And, or it could be a bigger community. I'm trying to build an online community around, something that I'm passionate about, or it could be, I'm trying to submit an article to or get an article published in a certain community, right? Online community. Right. So there's many types of communities, and the way, if I view it that way instead of me just talking to people or me just writing at people, it's more on a level playing field.
Hi, I'm Joy Newhold, and we'll be right back to our interview. When I started the Great Canadian Training and Consulting Company in 2002, I never would have imagined that one day we would have a podcast. So first, I want to thank you for listening and share some really exciting information about our organization with you. For years, we have made our live instructor-led software and soft skills training, consulting, and coaching services customizable to meet the unique needs of each client and committed ourselves to a high quality of customer service. This combined to make the learning experience better for the participants and the planning process easier for the organizer. We love helping our clients so much. We also develop many additional free resources to help you along the way, and this podcast is just one of them. At greatcanadiantraining.ca, you will find our free monthly webinars, blog articles, and free downloads covering everything from building better dashboards in Excel to navigating difficult conversations and everything in between. So make sure to join us at greatcanadiantraining.ca. But for now, I better let you get back to the podcast. Please enjoy the rest of the interview.
Yeah, and this is good. You're talking about community, because this everything you're saying now kind of leads us into the next part we want to talk about was your community, specifically as a co-founder of something called Activate T.O. Is that correct? Or is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a speaker series born out of my grad school days. It was wonderful. We were in grad school, some master's and PhD students, and we found that we were sitting in this ivory tower and writing about, important Canadian subjects, but we didn't actually know any of the people that were doing work on the ground. Mm-hmm. Community organizers, politicians, leaders in the community and community resources. We're writing about them, but we don't know them. So we threw in a whole bunch of different people that are often fighting and speaking on the same platforms, like this, they want the same change, but they don't always intersect. So we tried to bring an intersectionality to the city of Toronto and bring all those types of people together to communicate,
yeah.
to share, to get their voices heard, to tell the stories that, don't get covered on the front page of the newspaper or the TV, right? But are doing such important work in our communities in Toronto.
Yeah, the it's not the headlines, but it's really this. It's really the stories that need to be heard.
Exactly.
And
we try to say, like, don't assume that you know anything about this group of people. So trying to, very popular subject right now is like smashing those stereotypes and breaking down those boundaries between groups of people. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is that everyone has a story no matter what they look like.
Yeah, the assuming, because even when we communicate, going back to, again, you're asking first and sort of showing yourself as you are. It's you're not assuming the other person or labeling them or judging them. And it sounds like this Activate TO wasn't just about it was actually probably the biggest part of communication. I think it was about actually people listening to each other.
Hopefully. Yeah, of course. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone has a voice. And how do they use that voice, right? So, they say a lot like, oh, you found your voice. And it's like, well, maybe you always had that voice. You just learned how to put it on the right platform and how to communicate effectively so that others will listen.
I'm just writing that because that's really good. Everyone has a voice. How do they use it? And what's the right platform to use it? And you facilitated that to happen, to the voices not being heard. So let's go now to our segment that I like to call failure, ta-da. And this is a based on an improv game where we work with people to say, look, here's maybe a difficult point or maybe a failure, and we're gonna celebrate it because it's how did it change you? What did you learn from that? So if you're ready, Hannah, let's go to your failure, ta-da moment, and maybe share where was the sort of turning point for you.
This is a good one. I like this question because we should celebrate our failures, quote unquote, right? Honestly, we talked about me doing my master's, and after I graduated from that program at York and Ryerson, I thought, my life is going to be so great. I'm going to be able to get this amazing job. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to right away, I just had that sense of entitlement that things were going to be given to me. And it's hard to admit that almost because it's kind of an egocentric way of thinking. But I was quickly brought to my knees. I became pregnant. I had a daughter, totally not prepared for that at 24. And I ended up relying on those community resources myself. So applying for Ontario Works and having to go to job training programs, having to move back in with my parents, and really totally getting smacked in the face by reality that, I got to work to get my stuff together. I gotta, life is not going to work out the way. I might have a 5-year plan. That's great. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 5 years from now. So I had to really reevaluate and get back down to the basics, which means getting in touch with my feelings and writing some stuff on paper. And I just was so grateful that the community was there for me. I was able to ask for help from every service that we had available that I could access, the people around me, about being honest. I don't like being a new mom. I'm not enjoying this. Everyone posts that it's so fun and so beautiful. And yes, but I was like, oh man, this is just so unexpected. I wasn't prepared for it all. So it was good.
Well, good now, yeah, for sure. Obviously, was a very you just were not prepared. You just don't have the life skills, the life experience. You've never been down this road before, especially when in your mind you were getting your master. You got your master's, then you have this job, and you got the big house and the big car and the beautiful family, and you're going to beautiful vacations. It's like wah, wah, wah. And it didn't turn out that way. But again, it's this vulnerability to say, okay, reevaluate. This is not what I had planned, but I can't do this alone.
Yes, 100%.
I need to ask for help, and I think again, going back to we don't have to feel that we always have to be a know-it-all, and if you're a leader, people are not always looking at you as a leader that you are always know the answer. That as a leader, sometimes it's sometimes, and in fact, you're going to even be more of a leader when you say, "I don't know."
Exactly. Yeah, that's helpful. And even having every leader has a mentor.
Yeah.
Every leader has a leader that they look up to. So asking for mentorship and mentorship programs like that really helped me as well. Being able to say, "Hey, you're an amazing leader. How do I get to where you are?" How do I learn those skills that you had? Or tell me your life experience, right? So making those one-on-one meetings with people, even if it's fearful, even if I'm afraid, I still try and do it, because one-on-one meetings I think are undervalued, right? We're just talking now. I don't often get to have a one-on-one conversation with people and have that vulnerability and that honesty as often as I'd like to.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said for one-on-one, and it can still be done remotely. That's the thing. It doesn't always have to be face to face, and you don't even have to be looking at each other. It can be a telephone call. So it doesn't have to be such a build up to a one-on-one. I always think about, I work with a lot of people, in coaching, and they feel like, oh, I don't coach because they make such a big deal out of it. It's got to be the right time. We need a full hour, and I need all the paper and the data and the analysis. No, coaching is a conversation, and it starts with, as you're saying, start with asking some questions. How's it going? What do you think you're doing well? What would you like to see improve? Where do you see, just some basic questions to
what keeps you up
what
at
keeps
night?
you up at night, for sure. Just basic questions to really get that person, as you keep saying, to share their story. And that one-on-one, the intimacy of that, if you can create safety, such as a great question, I'm going to use that from now on. What were you thinking just before this happened? What were you thinking just before you walked into this meeting? I'm stealing that from you. That's gold. Gold, Hannah. This has been a terrific chat about how writing has fueled communication and our communication styles and really our curiosity about the other person. Where can we find out more or connect with you?
I have a website at hannahtuff.com. And feel free to add me on LinkedIn too. I'm always looking for more connections and looking to chat with people and connect through writing or through voice. You know, writing is not dead yet.
Absolutely.
I even still write letters and have pen pals, you know. So I'm so happy that I was able to have this chat with you, Joel. I think that you're doing wonderful work, and I really appreciate you asking me to share some of my thoughts.
I appreciate it, Hannah. Thank you so much. And now the part of our show that is our 3 takeaways that we like to call our 3 stars, nos 3 étoiles. Number 1, unique syndrome. We all like to believe that we are unique, yet we are all humans. And yes, we have different experiences in different contexts, but we share the similar fears, wants, and needs. Number 2, stop showing, stop telling, ask first. Be curious about the other person. I really liked Hannah's question, which was, what were you thinking just before you walked into this room or walked into this Zoom? Number 3, I don't know. It works. It's about being open. It's about asking for help. As leaders, we don't always have to have all the answers. And that is our 3 stars, nos 3 étoiles. Thank you for joining us in our search for what makes a great communicator. If you enjoyed the show, then please leave a rating or review. Even better, subscribe to the Great Canadian Leadership Podcast and make sure you don't miss another episode. Let's stay connected. Follow us on Twitter or Instagram at GCT_Compues. And if you'd like more information, free resources, or class schedules on everything from software to soft skills training, consulting, or coaching, then go on over to greatcanadiantraining.ca. Thank you, and we will see you next episode.